Welcome to Pearls Pod, your bi-weekly dose of history, politics, and culture without the liberalism. Except for right now, it's kind of your weekly dose. Hi, I'm Ray, one of your hosts, and we've got a special treat for you today. As many of you may know, we are hard at work and right in the middle of the Stalin Eras series, which aims to uncover, refute, and challenge the anti-Stalin and therefore anti-communist narrative that still plagues us today. Because we believe that a materialist understanding of history is vitally important in our decision-making today and our organizing in the future. Since the beginning of the Stalin eras, so much has happened for us behind the mic. One of us has moved to a different continent. It's me. We have experienced personal losses, health and disability issues, challenges in our lives, and struggles within our off-mic professions and organizing. In addition, we've received feedback from several listeners, thank you by the way, that the choice to release the Stalin Eras episodes weekly was welcomed, but too difficult to keep up with as the subject matter is so dense. In response to this feedback and our own very real material conditions, we have decided to offer a little break before we publish part 3. But rather than leaving you hanging, we are showing you once more what you can find behind the iron curtain of the Patreon paywall. We have decided to unlock the 2 most recent Q and Ray episodes where I, Ray, ask my fellow co-hosts questions that I'm curious about, as well as questions from our Patreon subscribers. If you would like to become one of our Patreon subscribers, head over to patreon.com/ProllsPod, where you can find all the other Q and Ray episodes, backstage pass, episodes of the already published Stalin Era series, previous surprise drops, bonus episodes, the Theory Beats project. By the way, we're working on Rosa Luxemburg's Reform or Revolution right now, and study guides that accompany every main feed episode. We have especially enjoyed the live listens for every Stalin Eras episode with you all over at the Patreon. If you would like to ask questions for the next Q and Ray, make sure you join the Agitprop tier or higher. Thank you all so much for your ongoing support, for your feedback, and for your willingness to engage in this project. We hope you enjoy this brief foray into the Q and Ray episodes, and we'll be back to the Stalin era soon. May the specter haunt your streets, and solidarity forever. Welcome to Pearls Pod Q and Ray, where I, that's me, Ray, harass my co-podcasters, whoever's available and not doing anything right this second, to get on the mic with me and answer some questions. But today, it's not just any questions. It's not just the questions that I pulled out of my own imagination, but it is also, in fact, questions from the Agitprop and above tier of our Patreon. So if you would like to be the one selecting the questions, I highly recommend that you go to patreon.com/PearlsPod, sign up at the Agitprop tier or higher, and you will be able to ask us questions. But since I was here first, I get to ask questions first. First question. Do you like surprises? Why or why not?
Well, I'm Justin, and I'm one of the proles that had nothing better to do except take my kids trick-or-treating. But here I am serving the people.
Shit, I'm sorry.
And now it's
your doorbells ring in the background.
Are you listening? However, I love surprises. I like surprising people more than I like being surprised. But I do like being surprised if it's a good surprise. If it's a bad surprise, you probably just made an enemy for your entire life. Mm-hmm. I hate getting bad surprises. One time, one of my close friends switched out my tequila for apple juice. And I never forgave her. I'm still mad about it.
Did I tell you about the time that I went to a party at Only
Wait,
Justin's
no,
gonna
Jeremy,
know this person.
first, should you tell
Oh.
should you tell the people who you are? Because I didn't ask.
Oh, yeah,
Because I'm
sorry.
fucking rude. Because like Stalin, I'm fucking rude.
Rude. I'm Jeremy, also one of the proles who's available tonight. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of indifferent to surprises, I guess. I like a good surprise. I feel like every other person on earth, I don't like bad surprises. However, one time I was at a party. Justin knows this person, Mark. I was at a party at his house, and he left to go get burritos. And me and his brother flipped his entire room around backwards. And Mark is very OCD.
Obsessive compulsive.
Very OCD. And I went in his bathroom and flipped everything there. So like everything that was on the left went to the right. Everything on the right went to the left.
Horseshoe theory confirmed.
Oh my God. He was unhappy with us. That was a bad surprise, I guess.
I personally hate surprises. I feel affronted by them. I think that they are violent, and no one should do them.
Not even good surprises. You don't want good surprises.
No, the fact that it's a surprise makes it not good. So, for example,
Surprise. An infantile disorder.
exactly. So, for example, when the people's husband, Martin, air quotes, surprises me, he goes, "I have a surprise for you." And then he tells me what it is. And then he tells me when he will give it to me. And then I act surprised.
Beautiful.
He's learned.
I mean, I told him because once when we were dating, he just like came to my apartment and like knocked on the door. Yeah, I was like, never do that again. Why are you here?
Incredible.
To be fair, we used to live on the same street, so it wasn't like when we met, we lived like a couple blocks away from each other, so it wasn't like he didn't like go out of his way to like arrive at my house. He like really was literally in the neighborhood. But yeah, I don't like that. Before we move into the Patreon subscriber questions, I have another question. Are you into anything that is like not Marxist? Like, for example, I'll lead and say like, I love astrology. I think astrology is the only other true dialectic.
Something that is anti-Marxist, you mean?
I find that one way to express yourself. That is an opinion that one could have.
Something that isn't Marxist that I'm into, like a hobby. Is that what you're asking? Like, do I have a hobby?
Well, I'm not asking if you're like a Trotskyist in your spare time.
Yes, I am a Trotskyist in my spare time. That's the dialectic. It's at war within me.
He's a capitulator. False
I'm a
capitulator. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like I used to play video games, but now I don't have time to do that anymore. I don't know. We do RPG stuff once in a while. That's pretty fun. That's
Except
also
like
anti-Marxist.
it's so hard to, I don't know, man. Like once you have truly embraced the immortal science, it just taints everything in your life. Like you can't go to the fucking store or watch a TV show or play a video game or talk to a stranger without it just like gnawing at the back of your head.
Do you have a minute to talk about Karl Marx?
Yeah, exactly. It just permeates everything in my life. I mean, I play video games. That's very anti-Marxist. In fact, Martine and I are going to do like a
You're doing a 10-year stint?
Well, for sure. But I mean, we're going to do like a bonus thing where we review video games from a Marxist perspective. However, I don't know. Like, I mean, I do a lot of things that aren't like, I like comics and almost all of them are not Marxist, although they do lean pretty left. I don't know.
All right, as you
nothing
can see,
quite as
two real comrades
not quite
and me,
as egregious as astrology, but
Oh, I'm doing a play with Ethan. That's a thing I'm doing. I'm doing a play with Ethan. That's a thing that's outside of Marxism.
But are they Marxist plays?
No, not really.
Well, he's not doing Brecht. You heard it here, folks. Anyone can send their birth chart to us if you are of the agitprop tier and higher, and I will read your birth chart.
Yeah, all of the entries are the same. It is, what did you grow up as? What influenced your upbringing? Where did you live? Okay, now I can tell some things about you.
Some would say that the sky, when you were born, is a part of your
yeah. So I actually, I do have, as much as I've been giving you shit, I do. It's just there's too much. It does affect the way that you develop in some way or other.
Hard agree. Speaking of the agitprop tier, a question from Beef Drip.
It's really upsetting.
Also, Beef Drip. Beef Drip. You actually asked very thoughtful questions that I am just going to pare down for the sake of time. But the first question is about mental health, the relationship between mental health under capitalism, but also how that has an impact on our organizing efforts, right? So sort of like the depression or the isolation that you might feel under capitalism, and how that feeling of alienation and the impact that that has on your mental health and the toll that that takes on your nervous system can sort of interfere or impact our organizational or mobilizing efforts. And I didn't know if you guys had thoughts on that, experience with that, what you do about it. Obviously, by the way, we're not giving advice. We're just sharing.
Well, I mean, it certainly happens, and especially if you spend a lot of time doing IRL organizing, that wears on you, because it's just a lot of people disagreeing with you, arguing with you, sort of, whatever. In some cases, Nazis will show up to your protests and try to shout you down and shit like that. And that, and it's they are largely cowards. I got doxxed by some eco-fascists out of Oregon once, and I got scared. I changed my name on Facebook, and I deleted anything that was public facing that had my face on it and all this shit, and nothing came of it. They didn't do anything. They didn't show up at my house. They didn't show up at my job. They didn't I don't know, whatever. So there's that, but also when you are depressed or you're feeling anxious, it is tough to motivate yourself to get out there and do the thing. It's been a long time, honestly, since I have been out involved in front of house organizing, but not everybody has to. If you have some way that you can contribute that doesn't involve being out there in the streets proselytizing, that's fine. But you should be doing something as much as you can, given whatever capacity you have. I do think it is important to do in real life organizing, so try to push yourself to do that. But if you don't burn yourself out, get out there and do as much as you can, but make sure you're taking breaks and rests and doing things that are not organizing as well. I think that's another thing. Back when Justin and I were involved in Colorado Springs Socialists and doing Proles Pod, that was our life. There was nothing else. All of our friends were communists or socialists or anarchists or, even Trotskyists. We had Trotskyist friends.
Friend, loose term.
But you know what I mean? Those were all the people that we talked to and hung out with. And you get to the point where you start to get weird, because all that you talk about, all that you know about, all that you can relate to people on is this one thing, and that's not healthy either. So make sure you have a hobby, you have some other thing that is outside of organizing that you're doing that you can relate to people with. Yeah, I don't know if that even answered the question, but
was there a question, or was it just kind of a statement, talk about it?
Oh, just I guess maybe discussing it. Yeah, I guess sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what Jeremy said, It sucks, and I think that a very large contributor to the mental health crisis in the world, especially in the United States, revolves around capitalism, and so it creates those conditions at the same time as they use the state to suppress us. So we're like fighting on two different fronts. You're fighting yourself and you're fighting the system. But I think it's important to work on yourself, to take care of yourself, to go to the doctor if you need to go to the doctor, go see a counselor, those kinds of things, so that you can free up that mental energy for the shit that actually matters, that's going to change the world.
And yes, of course, like fucking that's also part of it. Like the whole structure of the United States that fucks you is that it's hard to afford to go to the doctor or to go to a counselor, and that's also like another layer
And
of
you
shit.
might get a counselor that exists with the mentality and the worldview and their own indoctrination that essentially their job is to like patch you up and get you to be productive again.
Right. Or they just don't fucking listen to you. I've heard some horror stories about therapists as well. But again, like the point here isn't like this is a cure-all, right? Like we're not saying like there is one size fits all answer, but just try, y'all. Just like do your best.
Yeah, it's important to do revolutionary work, and therefore it's important to take care of yourself so that you can do so over a long period of time, rather than throwing yourself into it when you're not mentally, emotionally prepared, and then wrecking your organization or hurting yourself or whatever, burning yourself out, and then just not wanting to learn, organize, etc.
I think the first thing that is important to hear and to continue to remind ourselves, just like in my own opinion and in my own life, is like the way that you feel is by design, and you're not crazy. Well, I mean, I don't know, you could be mad, but you're not crazy for that. You're not crazy for that reason. You're not crazy for looking at a mad world around you, and feeling incredibly disenfranchised and feeling as though like something is very, 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 very wrong here. And you might have other people, in your own life, and no one close to you really sees it, and no one close to you really agrees with you. As we're recording this, we're getting very, very close to election day, and we've probably all watched people in our lives who 2 years ago were like ACAB, abolition now. And then as the election draws closer and closer, there's the sort of, I don't know what you would call it, like the siren song of the Democratic Party, like lulling people back into obedience, into submission. And that feels maddening because it is maddening. And when I'm going to use the language that I think is appropriate. I apologize if other people don't prefer this language, but like when you awaken to the amount of like propagandizing, when you awaken to the violence that is sort of like subtly and also like strongly at play around you, and when you awaken to the reality that there are people who are so like, you might really love them, you might really respect them, but they're completely invested in perpetuating this because they believe that it is like essential for their own future. Like it's just incredibly isolating. And so sometimes I think just like hearing somebody else be like, yeah, you're not crazy. Again, you might be totally fucking mad. I don't know you who's listening to this right now, but if you are mad, it is not for this reason. And I think that that's, probably the first thing. And then again, I say this like as a mad person, as a disabled person, something I have said and will keep saying, which is that like the front line of struggle is anywhere that you are. And so if you can't be out there safely, if you feel like it is not okay for you to be, for example, in a protest, maybe because of your immigration status, maybe because you are immunocompromised and people aren't taking masking seriously, for whatever reason, then that's not where your front line of struggle is. And then, I think it's important that we acknowledge like credit where credit's due. The concept of self-care arises in Black socialist spaces, mostly led by Black women, as a result to counter the draining effect that community care has, right? You shouldn't feel guilty. You shouldn't beat yourself up. And that voice in your head that tells you, I'm not doing enough, I'm not protesting hard enough, I'm not organizing enough, like that is the voice of capitalism. That is not the voice of the revolution. That is capitalism telling you that you are not being productive enough, but like rebranded with your current politics. Those are like my thoughts on that. But similarly, because Jeremy, you also said like get a hobby. Mine's obviously astrology. The second part of that question was like, what if you have hobbies and a bunch of the people who do that hobby are reactionaries? Like it feels like you can't
Stop playing Call of Duty.
Stop playing Hearts of Iron 3 or whatever the fuck it is. Actually,
I was assuming it was like going to the shooting range or something. I really went another way with this.
Like, to be honest, oh God, reactionaries can be working class too. Assuming that you're not like physically in danger from these people, you know what I mean? Like, don't fucking like get yourself killed or harmed or whatever. But engage with these motherfuckers. You already have an in. They're not reactionaries because they are like biologically reactionary. Somebody taught them this way, and you can teach them another way too. So like, you know, if you work in the trades, you know, as proletarian and as like union heavy as those are, they tend to be full of fucking reactionaries. But you can make an in on these people. Like it's not that hard. And most people, in spite of the fears, again, I think I mentioned this on the episode we did with Brett, like the fears that I had about talking about being a fucking communist, because I was like, oh my God, it's going to like scare people away, or they're going to like tell my boss or whatever. Like that hasn't happened. I've been quite open about it, like at the last couple of jobs that I've had, and it doesn't seem to make any, like, people are just, mostly people treat you like a fucking anomaly. However, they do listen to you, and they will. I had a fucking one of the he worked with me anyway, it doesn't matter. He worked with me, and he is, I imagine he probably sees himself as like apolitical, like most of the fucking people in this country do. But he found out like a few weeks ago that I do a podcast, and he's like, what's it called? And I was like, it's called Pearls Pod. And he's like, what's it about? And I was like, it's like a lot of different stuff, history, politics, culture, whatever. But you know, it's communist. And he's like, all right. He's like, well, I listen to podcasts when I'm working out. I'm going to start listening to it. And he started with the MK Ultra episode, and then he went to the Stalin series. And I was like,
hardcore.
He's like, honestly, man, you've been changing my mind about Stalin. Like, I saw him.
Yes.
Yeah. But and again, this guy doesn't really have any like particular political leanings or ideology that could be spoken of. You know, and obviously, I don't know, whatever. It's good to talk to these people because it plants the seed, if nothing else. Like, I didn't wake up Marxist-Leninist after somebody told me about it. In fact, you know,
No, you probably woke up a Marx-Leninist after your Saturn return.
You know, that's true. You know what? I didn't even think about that. It was exactly during my Saturn return that I became a Marxist-Leninist. You know, I mean, I was a lib. In fact, prior to that, I was a libertarian, and then I was a liberal, and then a progressive, and a social democrat, and all of these things. I went through all of these stages because somebody at some point said something that made sense to me, not in the moment that they said it, because I was probably arguing the opposite point. But later on, when something clicked inside my brain, some event happened to me, you know, some piece of history I read, who knows? I mean, all of these different things. So like, just fucking plant the seeds, and yeah. But again, having a hobby or having something outside of socialism or communism or whatever that you can relate to people on, even if it is something that is full of reactionaries, that's good because it's a way in.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I mean, most reactionaries are from the working class, you know, and obviously this comes with that prerequisite, but they are usually reactionary because the liberals fucked them, and electoralism doesn't work. And so they would rather have a strong man that is going to break electoralism and, you know, supposedly give them a victory, although of course it never happens. And then they just kind of get stuck in that rabbit hole. So it's actually a lot easier, I find, to talk to them in that way. because you do not have to argue with them from the point of view that they're used to, which is the liberal point of view. And when you bring materialism into the conversation, it's really hard for them to argue back because they're like, yeah, I guess that's true. I don't know. So, yep, just like if you can do it safely and it's not killing you, just stick with it.
This is interesting that you guys came in with this answer. Maybe it's because I am, both feminine and feminized as a person in the world. I work in a caring profession. But I also just want to leave this here for anyone listening. You're also allowed to have a space in your life where you're sort of not going to talk about politics, whether you're with other people who are communists or not. I think it's totally fine if you have your friends that you swim next to at the gym or go to the shooting range with, which apparently I thought was a way bigger hobby than it is, or that you play video games with. And it's okay to be like, hey man, I got to think about this stuff all day at work or in the stuff I do. Is it okay if we just talk about something else? And I think that a lot of people are relieved
probably
not to have to talk about it. Again, the front line of struggle is wherever you are, and also the balance of your own boundaries and having the energy to engage is important. And I think it's totally fine. And my personal opinion, although, maybe my opinion is not valid because I like astrology, that does not make you a bad Marxist not to want to talk about politics when you're at your one hobby for an hour every week.
There's that.
Yeah, and I can do that with liberals. I have a tougher time with reactionaries because they say so much shit that I just want to punch them in the face for. So I tend to argue.
Yeah, more. I agree. I also think that it's okay to be hey man, that's weird.
Quit being weird.
There's something about me, ironically, of the five of us. I'm definitely the most toxic masculine out in the world of all five of us, right? I've really got a kind of chihuahua thing about me. I'm really small, but I can be really vicious, and I just really don't have a problem being yeah, man, that's fucking weird. And then usually nobody's gonna push back against that because they feel really ashamed, Right. So that also works. It's okay to just straight faced tell someone you're being fucking weird, and then they're oh.
Are you triggered, liberal?
Right. But we did have the last question. Thank you, Beef Drip. We love you so much. Do you have any video games that you think are a little bit class conscious or
there's a lot
aiming overtly to be class conscious? Is there any that you like? If you hear my dog crying in the background, it's because there is food. I treat my dog very, very well.
I mean, it's kind of all over the place politically, but it sort of, I feel comes down at least quasi left, and that's Disco Elysium. It is the game which is most like playing a tabletop RPG, I think of, even though it's, even though there's games like Baldur's Gate 3. But it is, you can choose to be basically this world's equivalent of a Marxist, but you are a cop, and people point that out. They're like, you're a Marxist cop? Are you fucking stupid? Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty fucking solid though.
Yep, and I have just got done beating Cassette Beasts, which is Pokemon mixed with, I don't know, just Pokemon, I guess. And there's a lot of class consciousness in there. One of your quest lines revolves around shutting down and destroying all of the landlords, the real estate guys on the island. They're all vampires, and you even run into a guy that looks remarkably like Karl Marx and says Marx things. They make all these amazing puns about landlords and property and property theft, all that kind of stuff. So Yeah, there's that. I mean, I feel like there's a bunch more that I'm just not thinking of right now. Obviously, there's very explicit ones that are more like communist, but they're very fringe, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think a lot of indie game designers tend to be socialist because of just the conditions they're working in, right? They're struggling to do anything. They're trying to find their creative outlet, and the corporate world is pushing back against them really hard. And so I think it just kind of brings out those types of people. And so you'll find them, a lot of that kind of sympathy and stuff in a lot of different games. Obviously, there's stuff like, Cyberpunk 2077, stuff like that is more anarchist minded or whatever, but it's still very anti-capitalist. I don't know. Mario.
The only game I know is Twister. So I don't have an answer.
Yeah. I didn't think about Twister. It's a metaphor for alienation. I don't know.
Communism is where one wife.
One giant polka dot board.
Ooh. Andre D asks us, if the hosts had to live in any actually existing socialist nation, past or present, where would they choose? Obviously, Vietnam. The answer is Vietnam. Vietnam. I would live in Vietnam.
I have two answers. So, I really like the way that the DPRK is structured. I think that I would like to live there. That said, I think that the smartest thing would be probably China, because the multipolar world that we're moving into has China basically replacing the Soviet Union, and the US is about to hit catastrophe in the next, I don't know, it'll be some event, but I would say in the next 10 to 20 years. And I just think it's going to get real bad. And so I think that...
Okay, no, but if we're having this conversation, we have to acknowledge that all three options that we just listed don't, I mean, like, if we're like really, if we're being like doomer preppers right now, I mean, seriously, none of those countries offer a pathway to citizenship for us. So I do think that that's something that you would have to contend with in the present, unless you were
right,
like...
the DPRK, that's kind of why I said China. I think you can get citizenship there, no? They don't take American citizens. Okay, well, then I'll just apply as a political asylum or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess you can do that. But same with Vietnam, you can get like renewable 5 or sometimes 10-year visas. But I mean, like, they can kick you out. Citizenship is
and they would have that right.
It's a right, and permanent residency is a privilege. Well, you say it's all good, but then they kick you out back to the abyss. I'm just saying, if that's your reasoning for choosing the country, that is something that you should think about.
Well, I'm not really worried about citizenship. I'm just thinking about getting out of here to somewhere where they're not going to murder me.
Escaping the fucking nightmare. Yeah.
Yeah. Because as soon as everything hits the fan, like, we're going to be, on
we're
the list.
We're going to be the first ones against the wall. Yeah.
We're real doomer preppers here. Although, again,
our voices are out there. It won't be hard for them to trace us and just...
Yeah. They'll figure it out. Yeah. Even if we use Aura. I think I've answered this question before, but in the past I would totally live in the GDR, exceptionally based GDR, very, very good on social issues in a way that the Soviet Union tended not to be, unfortunately, based on the conditions that it developed under. But yeah, I would totally fucking live in China given the opportunity.
Trotsky will never be alive again. Asks,
no, he will not.
What are some of y'all's favorite revolutionary songs from across the world in all genres?
Sometimes I feel the need to get incredibly hype, and I'll play After the Eulogy by Boy Sets Fire, because that thing is a fucking banger. Sadly, I did not get to see them play that live. Single tear rolling down my cheek. But it slaps.
Like a lot of songs by Immortal Technique. I'm thinking of The Fourth Branch off the top of my head, but there are so many.
I will unsurprisingly offer an album that you can find on the internet called Vietnam Will Win: Liberation Songs of the Vietnamese People recorded in Vietnam. But I think Vietnamese folk music slaps. I love it. I listen to it at home often. So it may or may not be the style of music that you like, but I think it's great.
If you get a chance to go to an Immortal Technique concert, do it. It's like what I imagine it was like seeing Malcolm X or Fred Hampton or something speak. Like he just is so charismatic and passionate. And it's like going to church, like going to revolutionary church.
Yeah, I mean, he went to a like performing arts high school, so he probably picked up some lessons there on how to, whatever, portray himself. He also beat up Lin-Manuel Miranda, which is like, mwah. Threw him in a trash can or something. It's pretty funny.
We will not be doing a Pearls production of any of Lin-Manuel Miranda's shows. Don't hold your breath for it, guys. Okay, honestly, we're out of questions. We're out of time. Thank you all. We love you. If you want to ask the questions, please go to patreon.com/pearlspod and sign up at the agitprop tier or higher. And you too can ask us questions.
Stalin.
And we can ramble. Stalin. We can ramble for like 10 minutes about nothing.
That's all I can think about these days.
Oh God. Yeah, we are knee deep in this, and it's a lot, folks. It is a lot.
You're welcome for our service.
Hi, and welcome to Pearls Pod, this special edition Q&A, where I, Ray, ask whichever of my co-hosts don't have anything else to do literally right now, a bunch of questions that I want to know. Speaking of those who don't have much to do right now, who do I have on the mic with me today?
Hi, it's Martin, and I do have some things to do, but among those things are answering these questions.
And we got Tony, and I'm pretty busy too, but the podcast comes first, right?
True. First question. This is a repeat question that I also asked Justin and Jeremy. Is there an actually existing socialist country, past or present, that you'd want to live in? For listeners, my answer has not changed. Still Vietnam.
This is a hard question, right? Because it's like hasn't been a socialist, or an actually existing socialist country that hasn't been like under constant pressure from the outside. You know what I mean? Like the answer that I want to say, just like quickly off the top of my head, is East Germany.
Yeah, that's what Jeremy said.
Oh, is it? Okay, awesome. Yeah, I haven't listened to it. So yeah, no, because
Ooh, not a fan. He's not a fan. You hear that? Tony is not a fan of the show.
Exposed, but no, yeah, East Germany, because by the end of by the end of the GDR, it was probably by far the most advanced socialist country, not only in terms of like technology and stuff like that, but also in terms of its socialist democracy, which unfortunately unraveled quite quickly in 89 and 90. But yeah, no, East Germany is the first thing that came to mind. But then on the flip side, you have East Germany being literally on the front line of the Cold War, which probably wouldn't have been an enjoyable situation, right? To kind of be, if shit pops off, like it's going to hit East Germany first, right? When it comes to the East Bloc. So I don't like that aspect of it, but in terms of like a developed socialist society, East Germany would definitely be on top of my mind.
That was definitely trying to like learn from and integrate some of the sort of misses or the things that didn't adapt well in the Soviet Union, and they really tried to find solutions.
I will say my second best, because the first pick is also Vietnam. I enjoy a society that holds its billionaires accountable. Besides, that Vietnam has a lot more things going for it. But my second option would be Cuba. Like for a time, I was really looking into studying film there. Ultimately, I didn't, but a couple of friends did go to San Antonio de los Baños. It's a world-class film program. Again, all of this happening within the chokehold of sanctions. And growing up, I had a lot of teachers from Cuba, also some friends. All of them ran the gamut, being, very much aware that sanctions are sanctions. Others, being a bit more on the fence, knowing that they were that the socialist regime brings a lot of good things and it's not as cut and dry as outsiders might make it seem. And others that are just like true believers, but because of the hardship of sanctions, opted to immigrate. So yeah, amazing things happen within the context and hardship that is sanctions, which I find amazing.
That's awesome. I'm just gonna add to my answer because I thought about it a little more as Martine was
Oh my
talking.
god, I'm on the Q&A with all the slow talkers.
Chillax here. Yeah, so for East Germany, I guess two additional things. One is it's developed childcare system and kind of child rearing system, the universal system that exists. As someone now who has 2 young kids, as far as I understand, East Germany probably the most developed system of that as well, and it would have been just life changing. The other thing is East Germany was quite active in terms of anti-fascism internally, but also fighting it internationally, participating in the downfall of apartheid and stuff like that in the 80s. Had I been around that time, it would have been definitely an opportunity to act in solidarity. East Germany was one of the hubs for the anti-apartheid movement. For example, they printed information there for the different campaigns. Guerrillas were trained in East Germany and then sent back to fight in South Africa and Namibia and all those places. So I think especially as a Black person, I would have felt, I think, more at home there probably than other socialist countries at the time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tony, you can take a little break because, I don't know how, but all of the Patreon subscribers, every single one overwhelmingly voted, every single one, to ask Martin, would you love me if I was a worm?
I would.
Would you love me if I was a liberal?
And that ends today's Q&A.
I would, but it would be harder than the worm.
Okay, fair enough. I would be the people's worm. Okay, fair enough. Hopefully the Patreons will be relieved. What do you guys think are the best and worst qualities in, I want to say group organizing, but I also think in general in community?
So somebody who is unwilling to compromise, right? I mean, if you're in community, there's going to be a bajillion different perspectives and desires and needs and wants and stuff like that, right? But at some point, in order to be able to move forward and actually do something rather than think about a nice idea in the abstract, you're going to have to be willing to dialogue and to compromise, because that can just slow things down so much when there's one person or even 2 people who are just they won't let the project proceed unless it's to their exact specification, and that's just fucking terrible.
Yeah, I would say that one of the hardest things is not listening. Not listening is kind of the a capital sin within organizing spaces, because there it can lead to so many pitfalls. And basically, before you start doing anything, you should really just listen to people, listen to what their needs are, listen to what is needed of you, and just learn from others who have done it before you, because you think that you can do it all and you can change the world, and which is very much possible, but if you're not listening, then you won't be able to. And yeah, it's something that I myself struggle with, and I can see that it's hard for people, but it is very necessary to be able to listen before one act.
And I think that's key, especially your point of we don't know everything, right? Or we don't necessarily always have the best outlook on how to move something forward. And I'll use our project for an example, right? Being on Actually Existing Socialism and kind of getting to do everything the exact way that I want to, is great. And I was very
Wait, sorry, what's Actually Existing Socialism? Do you have another show or something?
The podcast that you may know me from. And like what I've noticed working like with this team, right, is that it's like I'll have like this trailer, for example, they're working on. I put out the thing, and then getting the feedback, I was like, oh shit, there's all this stuff that will make it way better if I like actually listen. No one has perfect insight into everything, so getting a group insight to make whatever you're working on better is always going to be key.
I think the best quality is when people can just like be fucking cool, man. And I really do mean it, right? I say this as like a queer person who is from a really small town in Appalachia. You can kind of be whatever you want to be. There's this belief that within small town America, everyone is like super conservative and really reactionary and they're incredibly close minded. But the reality is, something Martina and I say often is like, it's very hard to hate people up close. And if you can just like be fucking cool, man, to everyone, you're just going to have a much better time. And again, I think it's like a anti-Marxist, it's an anti-materialist analysis or assumption or a lack of analysis to assume that people have the opinions that they have because they're like stupid or hateful or something like that, sort of organically or essentially, right? And part of like unraveling or letting go of this idea of essentialism is a willingness to acknowledge that everybody thinks the way that they think because they've had the experiences that they've had. And again, I say this as a very anti-American American who has spent, about half of my life somewhere else. We can always sort of be like a corrective experience for people. We can always offer them something of like, oh, I didn't know that, I don't know, queer people could just be fucking normal. I didn't know that. And again, like we're allowed to have our own culture. We're allowed to behave the way that we behave in other spaces. And I'm not suggesting code switching or something like that as a way to minimize yourself or to betray yourself, but as a way to meet other people where they are in the hopes that we can model that and that down the line other people will be willing to meet us where they are because we have extended that first. I think that being fucking cool, man, is my favorite thing. And I guess, yeah, maybe my least favorite thing is also an inability to listen deeply. Although, like, if I'm honest, I'm saying that because I think it's a good answer. The actual thing that is like so fucking annoying to me is that like when people are not efficient, me and Stalin out here just fucking loving American efficiency. And I constantly have to like breathe and remind myself that like in some ways, efficiency is capitalism / industrialization working through me. And I have to like surrender that. But like me personally, I have such a difficult time because I approach everything with like, what is the most straightforward, least amount of work I could possibly do on absolutely anything in any given moment. And when people don't share that, I struggle. Okay. Speaking of American efficiency, now that I have the international pros on a call here, what do you wish Americans understood about their / our like Americanness?
I would say that when it comes to people who are critical of the United States and who are, outside of the country, is that at least from my experiences, of course, will not be a blanket apply to everybody, but they have a they have a better understanding of America's foreign policy than actual Americans.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like the purpose of American politics within the country is to obfuscate and like alienate Americans from the actually existing foreign policy.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's very key because, like, I remember watching this video. It was like, one of these like American travel bloggers, right? And I think he was in Pakistan, like in some market, and he's like recording things, walking around. And one of the shopkeepers like, "Oh, hey, like, how's it going?" He's like, "Oh, I'm shopping. I'm from America." And the guy's like, "America, like terrorist, right?" Like, and they start just like, like bringing up like legitimate criticisms
Based shopkeeper.
of yeah, like he's like he's like selling like rugs or something like that, right? And he gave like probably a more like reality based material understanding or explanation of the US's foreign policy than this American who was just like stunned that this guy was even bringing any of this up. He's like, what does it have to do with me, right?
I mean, I think about this a lot as recently I've seen a lot of liberals posting and writing things, saying things, directed toward conservatives or people more conservative than they are about how I don't know how to make you understand that people are people and that you should care and that human rights are for everyone. And, I haven't talked about it that much on the podcast, but like my family is from the Levant. And I just keep thinking, like, aren't Levantine people also human? Like, isn't my family part of that? Those people whose lives are worth saving and whose lives are worth protecting. But then I just think about the average liberal American, and I genuinely don't know if they understand that Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, all of this intervention like is inherently American. I think that they still genuinely believe that it's like kind of separate and somehow different to or unrelated than the violence that people within empire experience.
Yeah, I agree with you both. I think even with Americans who live abroad, my here spouse not included, is that blindness towards the foreign policy aspect of empire. And most of all, like within it, the labor aristocracy dimension of it. Like friend of the podcast, Brett, he was talking about that element of working class politics within America. Like even if you're working class and you like do mildly well, you have all the incentive to not think about all the hardship that your mildly well entails. How like your microwave, your your pickup truck, and all these little luxuries and signifiers of not even wealth, but of like some sort of like middle class stability that everyone like I'm not saying that everyone should have pickup truck, but like everyone should have a right to like stem from like a lot of oppression of the global south. And since it's so insidious and indirect, and in some cases like very direct, but trying for like Americans to understand that is so hard. A large swath of America's identity is contingent on not knowing that and actively denying it as to live with some semblance of tranquility and peace of mind.
Well, that's a very great point. I think like in one of the ways I feel like the foreign policy gets like externalized. Like say for example, you could be an American working in Indonesia or whatever, right? And look at like the labor conditions there, and perhaps that quote unquote expat or really immigrant or whatever, right?
No,
They might.
let's do it. Let's duke it out. I have very strong opinions about this choice of language.
Yeah, no, I know, but I just for convenience sake, I don't have to explain everything. But essentially, like they could be looking at the country and being like, "Wow, look at how poor Indonesian people treat each other," right? Like not understanding that that the people are working for a corporation that's
Yes,
like
yes.
either multinational or based in the U.S., right? So it's like, oh, look at their culture to kind of treat people like this. Like, oh, this is so sad, but it's like, dude, this is like literally right? It's a corporation that's from your fucking like home state, right? So yeah.
Okay, because I alluded to it, I'm just going to take a moment and I'm going to say what I think about this language, this choice of immigrant versus expat.
Yeah. But before you explain that, you understand that I agree with you, right?
Oh, you do. I just know
Yeah.
that maybe
Okay.
some of our listeners haven't thought through
Gotcha.
this because we as proles have all had, I mean, I think in my case, it's more opportunities like that I have taken for myself and maybe for the rest of people, it's had to do with like the work that some of your family of origins were in, but like have all had instances in our lives where we lived abroad and examining really like what that means and what role privilege has to play in like where we live and the relationship between the country of origin and the country where we are. And I've seen recently, I mean, okay, this was actually a Guardian article, I want to say like 12 years ago or something, about how different white Europeans were considered expats, and then Russian, specifically Russian people who relocated to other parts of Europe were considered immigrants. And it was, a sort of woke liberal, but for the time, a pretty interesting discourse about how people from different places, even though they're from the same region, even though they're racialized the same or similarly, are called different things. And I sat with this for a really long time and I didn't really know where I fell. And usually, if I'm in a situation where I don't know who the people are, I just call myself a foreigner because, like, it's accurate, it's true, and it's neither of these words. And recently, I feel like there has been a resurgence of wanting to have this conversation. And the move has been okay, well, if you've moved to another country, you're not an expat, you're an immigrant, and you should call yourself an immigrant in solidarity with the other people who are immigrants. And I personally find this take, aside from being the most neoliberal playbook of just like slap a woke name on it, to be such an insane take, as if me with my whiteness and my American passport and my native English speaking is somehow the same as an undocumented woman with her several children who have found a way across a border and stand and beg for change in a parking lot, right? Like the word expat has colonial ties, and that makes it sort of problematic because the concept itself is inherently problematic. And also, it describes an actual situation. It describes my positionality in the countries that I usually find myself in. And the fact that somebody thinks that they actually have the choice, like they can just identify as an immigrant and then they become one, like is itself indicative of the privilege. So anyone who's listening, if you have not thought through that, that is my opinion. If you want to send hate, honestly, send it to Justin. I will say though, for me, the thing that I hate most about Americans and Americanness is failing to realize, again, we're so consumed as Americans with all of our different identities and our identity markers that we forget that Americanness, first of all, is its own identity and its own identity marker. And the other thing is that so many of the things like our race, our gender, our sexuality, are constructed specifically in the material contexts of the United States of America as it currently exists. And so to project this language or to project these ideas onto other people, even if it's like very well intended, it does not fit, it is not accurate, and Americans continue to behave with this kind of exceptionalism that they alone are the arbiters of who is X type of race or X type of queer or what this means, again, even if they are very well intended and trying to engage critically. Okay, moving to our second to last question. What is your most unhealthy habit?
Eating candy. Eating loads and loads of candy and like sugary stuff. It is so fucking bad. And like I know it's bad. And I have a problem. My name is Tony.
Tony.
I also have I have the same problem, Tony.
It's hard.
My husband, listen, there are other people who are worried that their spouses are having an affair. I'm worried about what's going to happen if my husband is alone in a room with a block of cheese. He can't be trusted. He can't act normal around a block of cheese.
No,
For me, I think that probably my least healthy habit, my most unhealthy habit would be that I bite my nails. Fortunately, when I have the discretionary income, I do have my nails done, and that really helps me. But biting your nails is really not good for you, and you should stop it. I chipped a tooth. Listen to me, children. Listen to me. Don't do it.
I have no more teeth because all the candy I eat.
You have to join our Patreon so we can get Tony some teeth.
I currently have 0 teeth, guys.
Spread the news. We need some dentures for Tony. Join the vanguard tier.
Tony needs a new pair of teeth.
See, if I lived in East Germany, I already would have had a new pair of teeth.
Exactly. Okay, finally, our last question for today. How do you keep doing shit when the world just feels like it's getting worse?
I think how do I keep going is that when you don't do anything, you feel even more stuck. Like it exacerbates that feeling of doom, I think, by just kind of giving up on everything. But it's in actually doing something, whether it's organizing or educating or whatever it is, you see that there is an opening for progress, an opening for moving forward, right? And like I think we talked about this in an episode, but it's kind of almost this idea of like a socialist realism, right? Where it's like we're kind of like thinking about building the future by taking the steps right now. We're imagining this future, right? And I think that it's a positive outlook. It's a revolutionary outlook that can help get through the doom.
I would say
just eat a block of cheese and feel better.
Just eat a block of cheese. I think I sometimes am a bit of an optimist without the radicalness, just like very happy-go-lucky in my way that I engage with the world sometimes. And so I just like put one foot in front of the other But I would say that, like when I engage that part of my brain that says to me, read theory, I do engage, with a more nuanced and complex, version of that. Like I properly engage with radical optimism. I don't remember the quote, the complete quote, but like.
Oh, good. Just go with what you think. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, no, but like the cliche of the MLK quote of the long arc of history bends towards justice, but like the second part that that they sanitized out is that you have to do something for that to happen, or it won't naturally. And so, like, complacency is very easy and very tempting, and sometimes you will give into it. But I do believe that, like, trying times require action, require community, and require, cunning. And in that sense, I think that, like, as long as you have that and work towards that, you can really live in the absolute worst of times, as we students of history have seen, and have some semblance of sanity within that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought you were going to say that when you said trying times, I thought you were going to start that like trying times creates hard men and hard men create hard times.
Oh God, no.
Wow.
Trying times just create trying times.
Yeah.
How do I keep going? I don't. I complain to my husband about the impossibility and the enormity of so many things. I think that it's really important that when something feels alive for us, that when something feels really meaningful for us, that we take action on it. Whether that's learning more about something, putting ourselves in spaces where we can engage meaningfully in something, organizing or participating in something that somebody else has organized, donating if we have the discretionary income. Because the reality is that without the organization, right, the organization that we're lacking, that has been like decimated over decades, without that backbone, without that infrastructure, we are motivated by care. That's like all we have is like the sort of engine of care. And there will be things that you don't care about. This is after the election. Maybe you didn't care, but some people did. And that might be because of something local in their community. That might be because of, whatever complicated reasons. And when you care about something, do something. And when you don't, it's okay. And it's through that network, that engine of care, that we can get ourselves to the place, hopefully, where we can continue to re-energize and reorganize and restructure our left movements in the US and around the world. Are we good?
That was great.
That was good.
All right. You know what? Subscribe to the Patreon, please. Please, dear God. Tony doesn't have any fucking teeth. My husband needs more cheese. Please.
More cheese. Made a spectacle on your streets.
Solidarity forever.
Con combatientes cubanos podrá contar el movimiento revolucionario en cualquier rincón